he went, he asked the rabbi of their synagogue
Okay,
where they had
so-
their party.
Okay.
It's
at the
almost
synagogue.
time to get started. We do have a little bit of a tech
Seconds.
setup
We're sharing.
change that I want to
Sorry.
at least make everyone aware of. So we have this other computer. And so,
Oh, we're on TV.
yeah, we had this
That's
tech
what I
setup
needed.
really,
You bring them in.
it's, the point of it, the point of the tech setup,
Oh,
so there's a benefit and a drawback and something that I'm really just noticing today. So we've used this tech setup 2 times. First for when we had the guest speaker, Amit Musai from Israel, and that worked really, really well. I think the people that were there were like, okay, wow, this was great. And then we tried it last week or some, I think it was last week for a board meeting. The Wi-Fi did not work and it didn't work. And so another thing so I've had a lot of time to practice teaching and being in the hybridiverse with the old tech setup, but the new tech setup, if you haven't noticed, I have to wear this AirPod in my ear, and this is called a monitor. And so this thing lets me know that the sound in the meeting is working, but it's a little bit distracting for me when I'm trying to focus on all of you. So I'm in a learning curve with that, and hopefully it'll be fine. But if I'm like, what, then that's what's going on. And also, so we have the computer over there, please don't touch it. We have the camera over there, please don't touch that. It's hopefully it'll just all work and we can be happy. So any tech questions before we move on to the Torah?
So you are the higher power.
I wouldn't go that far. I think that the Wi-Fi is a power greater than myself. That's what I learned last time we did this. Oh my goodness. So let's dive back in. Hi everyone. So good to be back in our learning. So we started this in January, I think the first Sunday after New Year's Day, and we're wrapping up this series of learning. I don't know if more dates have been announced for March. Hopefully they have.
Yeah, they were.
They
Yes.
have. Okay, that's good. So we're looking at wrapping up. End of May, beginning of June, end of the school year sort of thing. We didn't meet last week because of President's Day. We didn't meet for class 2 weeks before that because we had the guest speaker. So I was feeling the need to kind of like do a little zoom out and see where we are. So that's what these pieces of paper are for. If you do not have a piece of paper because you are joining us virtually, don't worry, I'll talk you through it. So we have on the left side here this list of parshas for the book of Genesis to kind of see where we are. So we start at the beginning. We started with Bereishit, the creation of the world, Noah, the ark, the rainbow, etc. Lech Lecha, there was a lot going on with that, and that's what we looked at last time. And so now we're in the 4th parsha of Genesis, Parshat Vayera. And how many parshas are there? I forgot to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12. So now we're at the 4th. So we're about a third of the way through. And this particular parsha, there is a lot going on. And so I just listed it over here. So we have this. So this is as my teachers would say, this is we have this summary that I prepared, and this is what's called, the phrase is reading it outside. Reading it outside. Now we're actually going to open up the books and read the actual text of the Torah and its translation, and that's called reading it inside. So a little Torah learning vocabulary for us. So looking at it outside, we have the first thing in this parsha, divine visitors, 3 men or angels. They come to Abraham and Sarah. They're like, you're going to have a kid. Then Sarah laughs and God's white lies. So Sarah is like, oh my heavens, I'm certainly not going to get pregnant because my husband's so old. And then God says, actually, she said that she was old. So it's interesting. This is one of the first lies in the Torah. So God's white lie. So we had a movement of the camera. So it's very important with the tech setup. So quick timeout, tech adjustments. Yeah, it's like wow, and then it's an earthquake. And so we would have to be very mindful. So let's try it like this. Okay. So if the Zoomiverse experienced an earthquake in the real life verse, just know that it was not an actual earthquake. I think it's going to be fine. And
Very
so,
good to hear, though, huh?
what now?
I'll just sit here and
I don't
just
need
take
one
it.
look, one look.
You,
Yeah.
so
That's usually right.
as long as you don't touch the computer, you are welcome to sit at the table. Yes.
She'll touch
Well,
it.
It's a little, see,
I'll
this is,
sit here.
okay, I saw our
Yeah,
tech
okay.
situation
I
has
just-
benefits and drawbacks. So, well, I mean, if our tech ends up dominating our learning more than our Torah dominates our learning, we might adjust for next time. And we have more books. Yeah,
So many.
here's a book that's not in use. There's a book that's not in use. We have,
Yeah.
oh, that book is not in use. Those books over there, yeah, they'll work for today, but they're not as recommended as this one or perhaps this one.
Oh, do you have an extra handout?
I do not, but it's okay. Here it is. Totally fine. Please enjoy. Okay, so we are in Parashat Vayera. So we can start at the beginning of Genesis chapter 18, also known as page 99 in the Eitz Chaim. Parashat Vayera. Okay. And so the thing about this situation, the thing about Parshat Vayera, or the beginning of Parshat Vayera, so the Lord appeared to him by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. So who are we even talking about here? We go back, so this is where we go back. We go back. If we look at page 93, which is the very preceding sentence in Torah, the end of Parshat Lech Lecha, we're talking about how Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised on that very day, and all his household, his homeborn slaves, and those who'd been brought from outsiders were circumcised with him. So we have had circumcision, which is a very big part of Parshat Lech Lecha, and so we turn now back to Parshat Vayera. And so right after the circumcision, basically Abraham is recovering from surgery, as is Ishmael, and someone. So we recently talked about Abraham and Ishmael. So we've got the him. So we're going to assume that it's Abraham, that Ishmael is not a main character in the story, and God is appearing to Abraham. Do we have questions on that so far? We're okay? We're okay? Okay. So Abraham is sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot, and he looks up and he saw 3 men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, "My lords, if it please you, do not go on past your servant. Let a little water be brought, bathe your feet, and recline under the tree, and let me fetch a morsel of bread that you may refresh yourselves, then go on, seeing as you have come your servant's way." They replied, "Do as you have said." Okay, so this is an introduction to the hospitality of Abraham and Sarah. So Abraham hastened in the tent to Sarah and said, "Quick, 3 seahs of choice flour, knead and make cakes." Then Abraham ran to the herd, took a calf tender and choice, and gave it to a servant boy who hastened to prepare it. He took curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them, and he waited on them under the tree as they ate. So we have hospitality strength. Yes.
Okay. What's interesting is they're referred to here as men.
Yes.
3 men.
Yes.
I mean, that's how they're translated.
That's true. It also is anashim, which is men in Hebrew.
Oh, so the Hebrew, that's what I wanted to ask. The
Yes.
Hebrew says they're men.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So we don't.
But we know in the spoiler alert, that subsequently we know they're not men.
Well, so here's the thing. We have I just saw this. Where did it go? Okay, on the Eitz Chaim page 99, the below the line commentary, that very last little half a paragraph chunk there, it will become clear in chapter 19, verse 1, that these travelers are angels in human guise. So let's turn ahead to chapter 19, verse 1. Okay. So now this is where I'm like, I'm not sure that commentary makes any sense to me, because now we're on page 104, 19. The 2 angels arrived in Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to greet them, and bowing low with his face to the ground, he said, "Please, my lords, turn aside to your servant's house to spend your night and bathe your feet, that you may be on your way early." But they said, "No, we will spend the night in the square." Okay, so interestingly, we have a similar act of hospitality. So Abraham and Sarah providing the hospitality in the first situation. In chapter 18, we have Lot providing the hospitality in chapter 19. But the thing is, that's making me a little bit questioning of this analysis here is that we have 3 men in chapter 18 and two angels in chapter 19. So so this commentary is saying that chapter 19 proves that chapter 18 is actually angels and not men, but I'm not really convinced about that yet, personally. Who's convinced? Yeah.
It's been said with another resource that washing feet is a sexual
Ooh.
What?
Okay.
act.
In
Don't
some
you remember?
cultures.
Yes, yes,
No,
yes,
no,
I
that
do.
it could be interpreted that way.
Mm-hmm.
And angels don't have sexuality. So the first one is
Mhm.
not, the second one maybe. But the
Uh-huh.
why would you have in the man? Maybe it
Uh-huh.
isn't.
Well, let's see how cultures it could be, or in some it could be. But also, we turn back to 19. The, the thing that we just read, chapter verse 2, he said, "Please, my Lord, turn aside to your servant's house to spend the night and bathe your feet. Then you may be on your way early." So we do have the idea of foot washing in both.
But I think that's a hospitality thing. They've been traveling wearing sandals.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, they're not wearing SAS shoes or, you
Or-
know, or
or-
heavy duty
or
REI
yes,
boots, or
right.
they're wearing sandals and they want to clean their feet.
Yeah. So I see that Arnold has his hand raised, and you'll be up next. But there's just one thing I want to say. It reminds me of when I was first living in New York City and taking the subway, and like you washing one's hands, you're supposed to do that, right? And like growing up as a kid in California, it's like after you use the restroom, you wash your hands. Before you eat, you wash your hands. But in New York, I learned this different custom of when you come into your house from having taken the subway, you wash your hands because you run them under the water, and it's like
shower.
wow, and so people are traveling, washing their feet. If they're wearing sandals, it's kind of like washing your hands. Maybe it's also a sexual act of some sort. I'm not quite seeing that here, but Arnold first, and then we'll move on. Arnold, you're up.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning, Arnie.
Getting back to the angels, I read in some commentary that since each angel has a specific mission, and there are 3 at the beginning and 2 that leave the tent area, the one that stays behind at the tent area is the angel that's been assigned to the pregnancy of Sarah. And the other 2, their assignments are related to Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah.
I love that. I love that. Yasher Koach. And I think that this is, I appreciate you sharing this, because I think this is one of the reasons why I feel like studying the book of Genesis, and especially doing the act of reading it inside and looking at the text, looking at the Hebrew and seeing what it means, there's so much that, because the book of Genesis is so rich with stories, that it's also very, very rich with interpretations, just like the one you shared, that almost become part of the story in our ways of thinking about it and learning it, even though it's not actually in the Torah. What you said is definitely an interpretation that I've heard before, and I think it's an interpretation that is familiar to many people. However, it's not in here. Which is just good to know. It doesn't mean it's bad, it's just good to know. Yes.
I just wanted to make one comment. It's men, because if it were women, it would be a whole different story. If 3 women or 2 women approach, it would be different.
Well, anashim can mean people.
It can mean people.
But usually it would mean
Yeah.
men. So,
Yeah.
or often.
Okay,
But
well,
if
okay,
time
time
women
out,
just
time out. So just before, okay, because we're so hold on a second. I'm gonna lower your electronic hand because we have electronically spoken. Okay. If so, now the idea of like, if this were 3 women, that brings me back to the idea of like, but foot washing could be a sexual act, it's like, but it isn't in this culture. And I don't think in this culture it would be a thing for three women to just wander
Well,
somewhere.
indeed.
Yeah,
It
right.
just,
I want-
so yes, it would definitely be very different if foot washing meant something different. If these three men, women, people, angels were a different gender. Back to the idea of anashim could mean something that is not attached. That is a very innovative interpretation that some wonderful scholars have, and it is not mainstream. So definitely holding on to it, but anashim generally means men or a group of mixed gender, perhaps, but it doesn't, that is great interpretation and it's very innovative. It's very innovative.
And generally, it's men.
Generally, so tell me more about what you mean generally men.
Well, to go with, wherever it's plural,
Mm-hmm.
we assume it's inclusive.
Wherever it's plural, we assume
Or just, it's
Correct.
broader
Or
interpretation,
just-
or just men, of course.
correct.
But, no, I was just thinking,
Mhm.
as the story goes,
Mhm.
that if three women approach, it would, it doesn't make sense. But it would be a whole different story. I mean, this
Yes.
was just a little aside.
Yes.
It was not intended for major discussion.
Me too,
Well,
actually.
Well, this is just studying Torah. Anything can be a topic for major discussion. Yes.
Well, since you brought us into the next section with Lot,
Okay.
there
Okay.
they specifically invite the men in to be intimate with them, and they talk about how their daughters haven't been with a man. So,
Mm-hmm,
so there it seems clear that they're men that are coming in.
Yes. So, okay. So we're skipping ahead a little bit, which is great. Let's just take a moment and get there. Okay. So we have the hospitality, page 101. We have Sarah laughing and God telling the white lie. We can go back to that later if we want. Now, this is something I wanted to highlight on the way to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah here. It's page 103. If you have the Eitz Chaim, I recommend you look at that. And if you do not, it is chapter 18, verse 22. The men went on from there to Sodom while Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Now here's where we're focusing here. Abraham came forward and said, "Will you sweep away the innocent along the what if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and innocent, not evil people?" So Abraham's arguing with God and Abraham is bargaining. Okay, so now we get on to the bottom of the page, the rarest commentary in the Eitz Chaim, which I like to call the gray box commentary. It is a commentary that is put always in a gray box. And this is why this verse is important. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? Abraham's conviction that God must be just has provided theological grounds for Jewish commitments to justice and to social action. For just as God seeks justice and helps the poor, so must we. So this is a source text for people who love social justice.
And this
Yes.
is what has always driven me crazy
Ooh.
when it comes
Crazy.
to the Akedah.
Ooh, that's also in this parsha.
Yeah.
Because he's arguing for people he doesn't know
Mm-hmm.
in Sodom and Gomorrah, and
Mhm.
Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when he's told to kill his favored son,
Mm-hmm.
does he put up an argument? No.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
I've always approached that with the idea that he had faith in God. And so he was going as far as he could go. And it's an angel, right, that intervenes. It's not
Mhm.
God.
Yes.
Well, we'll
No,
get
it's
there,
the
we'll get
angel
there.
who says
Mhm.
stop.
Right.
Mhm.
So it's the only way I can read that story and appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I don't see a discrepancy between the two.
Okay. So in just a moment, but highlighting the fact that we are moving our way towards looking at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and the men and a conversation about gender. We're skipping ahead a little bit to the Akedah, which is also in this parsha. We'll get to it all, but yes.
There are some differences between the two anecdotal stories, or not anecdotal, the two stories. One is God says what he's going to do. The other one, God instructs Abraham what he's supposed to do. Number two, the difference I see is that, at one point, Yitzhak says, you know, we got all this stuff for the sacrifice. Where's the sacrificial animal? Instead of saying, you know, snarky, he said something like, I got bad news for you, kid. he says, God will provide. So, and God has already said at that point that Yitzhak would be the heir to the whole breed. And so he must know, it's a complex story that I don't quite understand, but something's going on there because, you know, that's what actually does happen. God provides, you could say God provides the ram that got stuck and in the ring, and God stops him. And what does he think? Does he think somehow he'll be resurrected or something? God has already said that Yitzhak would be, so did he change his mind? So the story's got a lot of interesting nuances to it. But there are differences between Sodom and Gomorrah and the Akedah. The big difference.
Okay, I agree that
No,
there's differences.
I appreciate that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then I think last comment before we do a little bit more reading. Go
Okay,
for it.
well, I was just wondering if anyone else had the same reaction I did when the rabbi read this quote about Abraham saying, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty, on and on. I thought of Gaza,
Yeah.
and I thought of the dilemma there. And I mean, it's always a dilemma. It's always a dilemma. So anyway, it just kind of freaked me out seeing that quote.
Right. And this is, you know, something that, as you know, throughout the generations in many different situations, it resonates, but especially now, it resonates in a different way. And so in response to that comment, kind of bringing us back towards the part of the story that we're already moving towards, here's the thing that gets me about this story. I had a teacher in Jerusalem who was very, very passionate about social justice and this story, and this is how we're supposed to argue with God. So Abraham bargains with God. God's like, I'm going to wipe out the city. At the end of the conversation, God, if there are 10 innocent people in the city, I won't wipe out the city. And then the conversation ends. But what happens to the city?
Destroyed.
It's
It's
destroyed.
destroyed. Okay, so either there aren't even 10 righteous people, or there are, and God just kills them all anyway. So
In fact, we don't know if there are 10.
We definitely don't know. But speaking of righteousness, I want to go back to this piece that, okay, where'd it go? Here it is. Okay. Oh yeah, picking up from where we were just reading, again with the feet washing. Okay, Genesis chapter 19, verse 3, page 105 in the Eitz Chaim. But he urged them strongly, so they turned his way and entered his house. He prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Okay, so these two angels, these guests, arrive to Lot's house. They're going to camp out in the square. He's like, no, seriously, come stay in my house. They're like, okay, fine, we will. All right. So they had not yet lain down when the townspeople, the men of Sodom, and old, all the people to the last man gathered about the house. And they shouted to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may be intimate with them. So this is obviously not hospitality. It's intention to commit sexual assault. And so Lot went out to them to the entrance, shut the door behind him, and said, I beg you, my friends, do not commit such a wrong. Look, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you please, but do not do anything to these men, since they have come under the shelter of my roof.
This is a sick guy.
Learning this last year with 9th graders, they did not take very kindly to this story in any way, shape, or form. Oh,
How
so
did they
something is
react?
happening here. They were like, this is not cool in any way. They were not approving of this behavior. Oh, things happening. All right, we gotta mute some people.
The girls were really appalled.
Yeah,
But you know, shows how little the females were valued.
that is one thing it could show. It could show a variety of things, including that. Yes.
It's also hospitality again in some cultures.
Oh yeah, have my daughter.
Yeah, no, it is.
Right. It's that's
Yeah.
another read, right?
Brown Dow has a story like that.
Oh, he would. He
Yeah.
really
Well,
sick.
what did he say? I have some sons. What?
That could also that's a whole different that would be a different. But so did you ask a question before that I'm forgetting?
No,
Or
it
just
wasn't a
you-
question. It was just people were talking
Mhm.
about when they were coming in, was it a
Mhm.
sexual act? And we weren't
Ah.
sure, but here I
Uh-huh.
said it definitely was, that he was
Mhm.
offering up his daughters.
Right. Not having to do with the foot washing necessarily, but having to do with the hospitality. Right. Yes.
Yeah, but
So-
they weren't guests.
Right, they were-
Townspeople.
So here we go. So what even happens now? So he offers these daughters that have not yet known a man, quite questionable to our reading, and probably for at least many generations, maybe not every generation
Hopefully.
that's read this story, but at least many generations, it's like, what's going on here? But they said, stand back. The fellow they said came here is an alien, and already he acts the ruler. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. So Lot is pretty new to the town. He's moved in fairly recently. The guests show up to his house. The townspeople are like, okay, everyone knows what this means. Lot is like, how about you just like take a deep breath and like not do that? And so all the people of the town are like, oh, look who thinks he's in charge. Let's get this thing done here. Okay. And they pressed hard against the person of Lot and moved forward to break the door. But the men stretched out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And the people who were at the entrance of the house, young and old, they struck with blinding light, so they were helpless to find the entrance. So now something strange is happening.
They're really angels.
So we're seeing some evidence of supernatural something. So we do have a small comment in the eighth kind, sentence 11, blinding light, a sudden immobilizing blazing flash of light. Say it again.
Shazam.
Shazam! So should we keep reading? Any questions, comments? Yes,
Well,
yes,
why
yes.
do they go to Lot? That's
Mm.
what's interesting.
Mm.
There, of all the people in
Mhm.
the town, the angels approach Lot.
Yes.
Now, is it
It's
because
connection.
he's Abraham's nephew,
Ah.
or is it because he is the newest in the
Mhm.
town
Mm-hmm.
and
Well,
and
mhm.
untouched by
Mhm.
the
Corruption.
the corruption?
Mhm.
I couldn't get the word.
Mhm.
The corruption of the
Mhm.
town.
Interesting. Okay, well, holding that question, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say that the parsha all makes sense
Mm-hmm.
if, echoing what Margie said,
Mhm.
if it's all a lesson about hospitality. If
Mm.
that's the main driving force behind all of the story,
Mm-hmm.
then everything falls into place.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
echoing, but it's just taking it a little further.
Uh-huh.
Which but does raise a question though, is hospitality, is it a virtue in and of itself?
Mm.
Or is it something that's demanded of the society because you get something out of it, you get a reward?
Mm.
Or is everybody potentially an angel, so you better treat them properly?
Mm-hmm.
Or it doesn't make a difference who they are, it's simply and I think that the Sodom case is more, it doesn't matter who the person is. It says in one of the translations, one of the hard and fast codes of the ancient Middle East is that you be welcoming to the stranger in your house.
Mm-hmm.
And the entirety of the story ties, both the parsha ties into that theme,
Mm.
and it works throughout consistently.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So this idea, I love where we're going with this. The idea that perhaps it is this family, not because obviously this city is not a particularly hospitable city. We have like the one, but even in these two stories, Abraham's hospitality isn't really in the context of a community. It's more in the context of a family. But perhaps there is this broader culture that the Torah is not necessarily commenting on explicitly about how important hospitality is. But I think also we see here that if here's the opposite of hospitality. When you're attacking people who are new, that's a very different, that leads to bad consequences, as we see.
Right. Good. So don't do that.
Hence, don't do that. Yes.
The story, Sodom and Gomorrah, sort of, this part of it anyway, it sort of implies that there were not 10 righteous men, right? 'Cause like all the men there, young and old, were there. Everyone was there, and they wanted to do bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the previous negotiation would just stop. So you don't know whether Abraham was successful in bargaining or not. But it seems implicit here that he wasn't successful because everyone's set out to do bad things. So,
There you go. Okay, so there we go. So we're looking at where does it say down to the last person.
I know.
What verse is the young and old there? Oh, yes, verse 4. Okay, I see. Yeah. Yes. So the negotiation ends between Abraham and God. Chapter 18, verse 32. Let not my Lord be angry if I speak but this last time. What if 10 should be found there? And God answered, I will not destroy for the sake of the 10. Now, right over to the next page, 105, chapter 19, verse 4. They had not yet lain down with the townspeople, the men of Sodom, young and old, all the people to the last man gathered about the house. So I think that if all the people to the very last person, that seems to indicate that there are not even 10 righteous people. There are 0 righteous people, which is very sad when you think about it. Okay, so I want to move us ahead because I want to make sure we have time for the Akedah. So the Akedah is in chapter 22 on page 117 of the Eitz Chaim. Right now, we're still kind of in chapter 19. So I think I'll point out a couple of highlights, and if we have any questions, and then we'll try to. So we're about halfway through our learning time today. Maybe we'll take 5 or 10 minutes to get to the Akedah, and then spend the last 20 to 25 minutes on that story. Okay.
We're skipping.
How's that sound?
Sarah and Hagar.
Well, we're not quite skipping that yet. We're picking up. So where we were kind of planning to scoot ahead to chapter 22, but okay, the striking with blinding light, outcry, God is planning to destroy the city. There's a plan for Lot to escape. Bottom of page 107, also known as chapter 19, verses 23 and 24, we have the sulfurous fire, the fire and brimstone, which I mean, like, what's Torah without a little fire and brimstone? But where is the Hebrew here? Top of page 108, gofrit va'esh. If you ever wanted to know how to say fire and brimstone in Hebrew, it is gofrit va'esh. Now you know. This is why Torah study is important. Then we also have chapter 19, verse 26, Lot's wife looks back and she turns into the pillar of salt. Gotta love the pillar of salt story. Okay, and then in case we haven't had enough disturbing family dynamics yet, page 109, also known as chapter 19, let's go with verse 33. So Lot and his 2 daughters, the 2 daughters who had not yet known a man, who have fled, now they're living in a cave, there are no other people around, and the daughters are like, how are we ever gonna have kids? And they're like, well, we've got a plan. Verse 33, that night they made their father drink wine, and the older one went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she rose. Verse 34, the next day the older one said to the younger, see, I lay with father last night, let us make him drink wine tonight also, and you go and lie with him, that we may maintain life through our father. And it works. And there we have the Moabites and the Ammonites. The end. Crazy story, huh? Yeah, so that actually happened or something. But in the spirit of moving forward, so here we have chapter 20, we have episode 2 of Abraham and Sarah being like, we're not husband and wife, we're brother and sister. And that ends up leading to great financial benefit for Abraham. The men who are tricked into believing that Sarah is available are duly offended, but it ends up being okay for Abraham and Sarah in the end. This is the second time that this happens. The first time is in the last Parsha, Lech Lecha. Questions, comments? Yes.
These are the same 2 daughters that he offered up to the crowd.
I believe so. We're not, yeah.
Laid with their father.
Right.
We never know their names, right?
If there's probably a midrash or 2 that has some hints of that, but I no, they're certainly not named here. Nor is Lot's wife. Yeah. But we don't have to skip right over it. Tell us more.
Hello. Was it years?
So I think that this is even not just in the Torah, but even to the times of the Talmud, the women's names aren't always mentioned. when women's names are mentioned in the Talmud, it's always like, whoa, okay, that person's name is mentioned. It's not just so and so's mother or so and so's wife. Now here in this story, we do have, we have the names of our matriarchs mentioned. We have Hagar, Ishmael's mother Hagar mentioned, but these two daughters, their names are not mentioned. It's true.
Well, I
And-
think it's a good thing.
You think it's a good thing that their names are not mentioned?
I mean, would you want to be named after? I don't know. I mean, this
okay.
whole episode is
Interesting,
pretty.
interesting.
Listen.
So there are advantages to remaining anonymous.
Mhm.
We're talking to an Israeli whose name is Shifra.
Where is the noise?
It's somebody's phone.
Oh, this is so, I'm so distracted.
Perhaps
Well,
it's
it's
on.
certainly
gonna
not
be
mine.
okay.
It's mine.
Yeah, I mean,
You don't know your own ring.
Well, it's because I'm listening to this and here. Anyway, please. Yes, what were you saying?
Oh, no,
yeah, she was.
Oh,
she was.
sorry.
so
Rude.
Shifra was telling me that
Uh,
in Israel, the cows are named Shifra and Pua.
it's like
Aw.
Spot. Yeah,
Well,
you wouldn't name your
because
son Spot,
those
you
are-
name your
those are
dog
the
Spot.
handmaids
Mhm,
who took Moses,
The midwives.
the midwives.
mhm, mhm.
And so, and is because the cows.
Interesting.
That's what it's called.
Well, so the
Yeah.
that I have been notified by the other computer that the battery is running low. So this is one of those tech moments where, see, the problem is when you really want stuff in the Zoomiverse, you need one person who's talking to the computer, you need one person who's messing with tech full time. But that's why this is a little bit awkward. So it's awkward. Oh, this is gonna be even more awkward because we got to get to the middle of the table. Okay. Yes, you need to take out my computer charger and plug in the other one. Remember before computers? Oh, not.
No, you want
hold
life
on,
was
like the
simple.
talkie
almost.
thing.
That's close.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like
that
this
one.
thing.
And then put that there.
No,
Oh,
no, it's not gonna work.
It's
It's
not
not
gonna.
a-
Oh,
it's
not
not
in
a-
there, in the other one.
Yeah, the black in there.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
There you go.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Thank you.
Oh,
Okay,
that's nice.
so we're
I
getting
like
there.
that.
Ah,
Teamwork
cool.
makes the
Yeah,
dream
I'm
work.
quoting
So
Rabbi Matt
Rabbi-
Shapiro.
It's
It's great.
3 and 2, so
3 and 2.
it's part of the discussion.
Ah, three men, 2 angels,
Yeah.
2 computers,
And
3
frogs.
opinions. I don't know. Yes.
Just a quick question.
Please.
We don't know how much time has transpired between when Lot and the daughters arrive in the cave and when they decide they need to sleep with him, do we? Is there?
No, there isn't really like a schedule, calendar, or time index. What do you think?
I think we need that because
Mm.
They
otherwise,
think, well, they think they're alone.
Mhm.
yeah, but they could, I
Uh-huh.
mean, is it a month? Is it a year? Is it
Uh-huh.
10 years? I can understand that they want their line to continue,
Mhm.
but it puts them in a really bad light if it's sooner than later.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if there was any
Well, and I
discussion.
think I appreciate this, which is like we need to know, we need to know, we need to know. So we come up with a creative explanation.
Make it up.
Right, we come up with multiple creative explanations. We make it up, and that's part of the process of understanding this. So you could write together, could write a midrash saying like they waited 2 weeks and then they gave up. That was pretty sketchy. Or like they waited 10 years and no
Right.
one came along, and it was the fact that they wanted to have kids was sort of like meritorious in a way, even though they kind of went about it in the way, like so there could be different
Yeah,
interpretations
I mean,
based on
wouldn't you
that.
say to your father, Daddy, we need to relocate where there are men?
Mm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Or say, Daddy, go to sleep. No, but
I-
but also if you give a drink to make someone drunk, they're not going to be sexually
That's-
able. But the wine in those days was very weak, or not, what we think of not. Well, the percentage of
Uh-huh.
alcohol was limited, but still,
Mhm.
the thing is, you have to have been there. The people, the person, or the way the tales were set down was not, they weren't necessarily there on the spot. So everything is relative, so you have to go with.
It definitely is relative.
Yeah. And
It's relative.
Yeah, so you have to stay relative.
Well, we also don't know how old those girls, because
Mhm.
when he offered them up and they were virgins, we're not aware of how old they were at that time.
Mhm.
And then they leave.
That's
But I
true.
assumed that he was already concerned that they hadn't yet met someone, you know, because he's saying, look, they're,
Yeah.
you know, we
Completely
gotta get them
available,
going
right,
here.
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But to whom would he want them to be?
He was
um,
desperate at that point.
This is-
Anybody would have been
This
okay
is
to
Sodom.
continue.
This is Sodom, so,
Yeah, they
yeah,
did.
you can't find.
And why the hell
righteous-
did he go to, remember when he had a choice of where he could go?
So he was a bad
And he
apple.
chose Sodom? I mean, there was something wrong with Lot.
A lot
Originally.
Well,
wrong with that.
So putting kind of, I think it's time to kind of wrap this one up and
Bring us
continue,
up.
because now we only have 20 minutes
Let's
left
go.
before, okay, so, but Lot made some questionable choices, and so did his offspring, right? But Lot wasn't Lot wasn't one of our patriarchs, you know. It was like Abraham, he was the guy. Lot, not so much. So there is that. Okay, so we have the second episode of the pretending to be the wife, or rather the sister and not the wife. Now let's look at this. So chapter 21, Isaac is born. Isaac is the first person to be circumcised at the age of 8 days. Ishmael is circumcised when he's older, and of course, Abraham is circumcised when he's much older. Then now we're continuing. Let's see, here we go. Chapter 21, verses, let's say 9 through 21, which is pages 114 and 115 in the eighth time. We have Ishmael and Isaac living in the same household. Sarah is like, this isn't good because my son needs to have all of the resources, all of the attention, and all of the everything. This other kid and his mom are a terrible influence. Get out. And so this is let's look at verse 12 for a second, because this is another special moment in Torah here. God says to Abraham, do not be distressed over the boy or your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you, do as she says, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued for you. So God is like, I know you're worried, but just follow Sarah's instructions in this situation. And so that's what happens. Keep that in mind. There was, and this, and that pasuk, I was talking about this, Women's League Shabbat, actually, if I remember correctly, that the Midrash interprets this to say that, you know, in terms of prophecy, Sarah was just better at it than Abraham. Like, no offense to Abraham. Abraham was pretty good at it, but Sarah was better. And that's what this verse proves, according to that particular Midrash.
Better at what?
Prophecy.
Oh.
Yeah. Better at listening to God. Well, obviously, Abraham was pretty good at it, but perhaps Sarah was better at it. Okay. So now, all right, moving forward, here we go. Abraham's pact with Abimelech. I was just like, what is this about? But this is like a conclusion to the whole last episode of she's my sister. No, actually, she's my wife. Sorry about the misunderstanding in that I lied, says Abraham. Okay. Now I think we're ready to look at the Akedah. We've already kind of started talking about any questions, comments, concerns, lingering things, burning desires to comment on Torah before we dive into the Akedah. Yes.
The time factor, how long were the girls alone?
Mm-hmm.
From other things that the Torah doesn't include,
Mm-hmm.
it's assumed that it's either not important
Mm-hmm.
or understood by the people who would be encountering this.
Interesting. There's a rather traditional saying, "Emukdam u'me'uchar b'Torah," which basically means it translates literally as "there's no early and late in Torah," but it is meant to say that the events in Torah, even though they're described like as a sequence, they didn't necessarily happen as a sequence, that we don't really know what times things happen. Like another thing that we kind of didn't really get super into, but back to chapter 18, verse 8, when Abraham is getting his servant boy to prepare the food for the guests, it's a calf cooked in curds and milk, which isn't kosher. So I mean, that's like the kid of the baby in its mother's milk. So okay, you know, like, well, I guess those laws of kosher hadn't been given yet, but how is Abraham, you know, and so it would be some sort of crazy explanation that the ancient rabbis would come up with to be like, no, Abraham totally kept kosher. And then here's this creative interpretation of these verses to prove that Abraham always kept kosher. So there's that. Okay. Are we ready for the Akedah? Not that we're ever really ready.
I know.
Yeah, I know, right? It's
Yeah.
like we read this like a couple times each fall. We read it on Rosh Hashanah. We read it when we read this parasha. And actually, when the summer right after I did my year of study in Israel, I took I think it was a 5-week class at Hebrew Union College on the USC campus. It was a great opportunity to learn with some teachers I would have not had an opportunity to learn with. And the entire session of the summer, the theme was the Akedah. So we spent, you know, like 5 weeks with different teachers talking about this story. And did we get to the bottom of anything? Like, I wouldn't say that, but I definitely have more books on my shelf, and there's that too. Okay. So sometime afterward, God put Abraham to the test. He said to him, Abraham, and he answered, here I am. So I feel like we could just stop there. What do you mean test? What is this test? Yeah, why? Yeah, why? That's a good question. Like, Abraham seems to have been following instructions pretty well so far. Okay, so we'll keep going, but feel free to interrupt. And God said, take your son, your favorite one, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the heights that I will point out to you.
That's pretty explicit.
Offer him there as a burnt offering. Yep.
What's the,
Ha'alehu sham le'olah.
sorry,
No, no, go
what's
ahead.
the exact wording in Hebrew? Does it say offer him?
Yeah, Baha'alehu sham le'olah. Offer him up as an offering.
Okay, but it doesn't say kill. It doesn't say murder.
He says offer.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't say kill or murder, but the olah, and again, this is another one of those ein muhtamu me'okar b'Torah. Do we know what an olah is? Later on, it will be explained that the whole point of an olah is it's an animal, the living that you kill that is burnt completely.
But the word offer is,
Well, there isn't the word offer. The word is the shora is repeated twice. Allah, ayin lamed hey, or ayin lamed yud, if you want to get really grammatical about it. But it's lift up. You know, it's the same word as make aliyah when you move to Israel. Same word as when you have an aliyah to the Torah, you go up to the Torah. It's up as in up in smoke. I feel like that's the up.
okay.
Okay, all right. Well, a little bit more. Okay.
I was counting your interpretation.
Well, it still goes along with my idea of he has faith in God. God is testing Abraham's faith. He's going to do what he has to do up until the moment. And then, of course, the angel comes just at the right time. And the word, the word offer in English suggests that he's just going through the motions. But offering as a burnt offering is a little different. But then again, yes.
No, well, yeah, first yes and then yes. Great, go for it.
It seems also to me, if I were Abraham, that for Abraham, it would be pretty clear that this is the test.
Yeah.
Because of
interesting.
love. Right. It's pretty obvious. I'm telling you to do something outrageous, you know. Take your son and love. I mean, it's clearly a
right.
a test.
But
Or it's
that's
like,
in
hold on,
narration.
time out. Yes, you first.
Well, he didn't have to think it was, just pretend. He was going, are you going to do this? I'm telling you what to do. Are you really going to follow me in my words? He doesn't know that it's a test. He's going to say, well, yeah, I'm going to follow your words. Here I'm doing it. I don't like it, but I'm going to do whatever you say.
It reminds me of like the trust fall situation. It's like you fall back. The whole point is like you are, the plan is for the person to catch you. Are they going to? Are they going to mess up? Like, we don't really know. Yes, and then yes, great.
No,
And
I
then
said,
yes.
that's what she said. It's the first line is a narration. What God says is in quotes.
There are no quotes in the Torah.
No.
The quotes are part of the translation.
Okay, but
yes.
But sometime afterward, God put Abraham to the test. Abraham doesn't hear that word. He doesn't hear the word test.
Correct.
He hears Abraham, here I am, and he hears, take your son, your favorite son, Isaac, whom you love, go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the heights that I will point out to you. That's what he hears.
That's correct.
So, and then it tells you what Abraham does. So that's all he's hearing.
So far.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll hold on to that. Yes.
But hadn't God promised Abraham that Isaac would, have a wonderful future? So
right.
Well, he's told that Abraham will have all this progeny.
Let's look back to what.
Right. You're right.
What is said about
Isaac.
Isaac?
Thank you.
This might actually be in the last parsha. So let's look back and find this.
No, it's on page 114. It is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued for you in number 12.
What's the verse?
114:12.
So Genesis chapter 21, verse 12.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed over the boy, your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you, do as she says, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued for you.
So we know he's got to get married eventually.
Okay, so hold on.
And he doesn't get married until after the Akedah.
Yes.
So, I mean, it seems implicit and quite clear that the test is here. God's going to tell him to do something that in a literal sense would be the end of Yitzhak's life. But he has the test is, do you understand, do intuitively or whatever, the test is something else is going to happen. I mean, he maybe doesn't know what. Maybe he's got an idea what. Is he going to die, be resurrected? Is he going to be saved at the last minute? He doesn't know. But if you look at three stories, the Sodom and Gomorrah and the casting out of Ishmael and this story, you see three different things. One is Abraham's bickering with God to save the town. The other one with Yitzhak, I see that he's distressed. He's like, this is a big problem. And then God has to reassure him. Here he doesn't have either of those. So this is, and he is going to be obedient and just understand it's going to work out along with the promise somehow. And he doesn't know how. So that's the big test. He has no idea. To me, that's the way I understand it. There's a big test going on. Doesn't know how it's going to work out. And so there's a very dramatic point in the story where he's got the knife in his hand and he's about to slit his throat. And so, the thing I always think about when I hear that story is like, what would be going through somebody's mind who's going through the test? So it's mysterious to me. I don't quite understand that, but something he has to say, well, I'm going to really do this. Does he expect him to be stopped? Expect the angel to stop him? Do you expect him to come back to life? So what's going on there?
Okay, well, quick time. So we got 1, 2, and 3. But first, what I want to say is that there's the piece about the knife and holding the knife. We haven't gotten to that yet. Hopefully we will by the end of we'll get there, But I think the piece about there's the progression. First, God's like, I'm going to destroy the city. Abraham's like, don't do that, and then next, God is like, so you have these two sons, this one's gotta go. And Abraham's like, I really don't know about that. And God's like, don't worry about it, okay, and then now this is the third time, and it's like, okay, I guess it's worked out, the way it was gonna work out these first two times. Maybe it'll work out however it works out this time. So hold on. 1, 2, wait, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I
Yes.
wanted to say in context, burning children, apparently from other things we've read, is not uncommon. Offering up a child.
Mhm.
So it gives a context for it. So it's not like something totally unusual to go along with what Jonathan said.
Mhm.
So
Right. It's, this is not an apt comparison at all, but where my mind went is sort of like, like spending all night on social media, like doom scrolling for 8 hours. Like people do that, but would anyone advise that sort of behavior? That's different. It being common versus it being advisable, two different things. Yes.
So I want to now go back to the thing about the offering him.
Yes. Verse 2. Right.
Offer him there, and you could read the Hebrew.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just read the whole verse too. Okay. Is that fine?
Yeah.
So Vayomer Kachna. So he says, take et bincha et yichidcha asher ahavta, et your son, your special one whom you love, et Yitzchak. It's Isaac. That's who we're talking about. V'lech lecha, but go el eretz ha-Moriah, and to the land of Moria, v'ha'alehu sham la'olah, and offer him up as an offering, al echad ha'arim, on one of the mountains, asher omar elecha, that I will show you, that I will point out to you, I will say to you. That's it.
So that doesn't conclude with Isaac's death. I'm going back to what you're saying. If we think of offer as the beginning of the sacrifice, it doesn't take us all the way through the sacrifice. It's just saying start this process.
Take them there and start the fire.
Right.
Start the process.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
Abraham sets out to do that, and maybe he's not even worried about it. Maybe he just is following the orders because he knows, like you said, he knows something's going to intervene. He's just starting the process.
Interesting. So it's like when you set something on fire, it takes time for it to burn up.
Or he doesn't even plan that he doesn't even think he may need to start the fire. He's just going there with this intention. At this point.
So it's about the intention, not the result. Interesting. Okay, so
I'll pass.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Well, there's another problem in verse 2, where it says God refers to Isaac as your only son, which is not true in a literal sense.
Does it say?
No, it
Where
says
does it
your
say that?
favored
No,
one.
it says-
Well, here it
says
does.
only
Here it
here.
says your only son.
The translation
Where?
does say only.
What verse
This
is
is,
that?
this is verse 2.
It's how they're
Which book are
translating the
you
word.
reading?
Which translation?
Take your son.
Genesis.
Doesn't.
No,
No,
you're
no,
reading a
it's-
different
well, this is-
translation.
Yeah.
It's in the
This
Chumash,
one
it's
goes-
in
it's-
the Old.
It's hers.
Different one.
This
No,
one
it
doesn't
says-
say only.
We have those are both Jewish
It
ones.
says, take for your son, your only one whom you love, Isaac. So
Right.
what's the literal?
Oh, that's interesting.
translation?
Did you
No,
see
here
the
it says
bottom?
What
favored.
does it
Did you
say in
see the
Hebrew?
bottom?
No.
So the actual word is
It's interesting.
Yechidecha,
Look at that.
right? And
That's
so
true.
the root can mean one, it can also mean special.
So
Oh, in
I
the,
think
in
Rabbi
the
would know better.
commentary, it says,
Interesting
I have
commentary.
two sons.
ooh, as one of my first Hebrew teachers said, and I still remember, every translation is an interpretation. I'm sure I've mentioned this already in our learning together. I had one student last year, a 12th grader, who is incredibly smart. He's, launched a successful first year and is such a great kid. And I had many conversations with him where he'd be looking at the translation saying, like, this is what it says. And I'm like, no, that's not what it says. This is what it says. And so that's the thing we always have to be really careful about when we get to translations. They're helpful. I don't speak Hebrew fluently, so the translations are very helpful for me. However, each translation is an interpretation. And so is it the only one or the favorite one, or is it something else? It's different interpretations. But we know that Abraham has two sons.
It
Well,
says
make-
each is an only son to his mother.
Oh.
So this
What?
is,
All about sorry.
where are you looking at?
We're looking at
It's
down
the
here.
notes on the bottom.
Good thing we include her.
below the
Okay,
line.
so we have page 118. I know that I think we have one hand up in
Thank
the
you.
Zoomiverse. We have one hand up in the real life verse. We're gonna look at this real quick, then get to the two hands and then wrap for the day, almost on time. Okay, page 118, below the line, number 2. The sages imagine a dialogue between God and Abraham. Take your son. I have 2 sons. Your only son. Each is an only son to his mother, whom you love. I love them both. Finally, God is explicit. Isaac. And so this dialogue, this midrash is from the Talmud, Sanhedrin, page 89b. So this is a pretty classic midrash. This is not. There are lots of midrashim that are found somewhere. There are some in Talmud that are a little bit more codified and easy to find. Yes.
Here it said about killing Isaac.
Mhm.
God did not say slaughter him
Ah.
because he did not intend for Isaac to be slaughtered, but only that he be brought up to the mountain and be prepared as an offering.
Hello.
There we go. Okay, so this commentary is from the is that the stone? Oh, that is the
It's the book of Margie.
it's the stone the stone edition Tanakh, which is a pretty mainstream Orthodox translation and commentary, which is oh yeah, it's just
Oh
great.
my
Yeah.
God, I'm Orthodox.
But this is why you don't have to be Orthodox to like agree with something in Orthodox Chumash. You don't have to be Reformed to agree with something in Reformed Chumash. It's totally fine. But okay, so yes. Oh, now okay, Arnie, I think you have the last word today. Go for it.
Okay, looking at it from Abraham's point of view, when he gets his marching orders from God, I think that he has to be thinking that this has got to be some kind of a test that's not going to come to fruition. That he believes that if God is really a just and righteous God, God is not going to really make him do this. So he's willing to go along with it. And I think he thinks that it's a test, but he's really not going to have to finish it. I think the crucial point is chapter 22, verse 10, where it says, Abraham sent forth his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. I think that for Abraham's point of view, the turning point is when he actually starts to go through with the act, that he starts to perhaps plunge the knife towards his son, and then the action is frozen by the angel. So, but I think that's crucial. I think that in Abraham's mind, he really has to. At that point, he doesn't believe it's God's going to call it off, and he's really going to have to go through with it. And perhaps he's thinking that, well, after all these promises that God made, if I'm gonna kill Isaac, God is not going to keep his promises, and perhaps he's thinking that maybe his relationship with God is not what he wants it to be, and he's ready to call it off. But it has to be very, very complex at the very moment where he has to lower the knife. I think the whole dynamic changes at that point.
I really appreciate that insight and that perspective. And as you were talking, I think because of a conversation we've already had, I'm looking at verse 10, and for the first time, I'm seeing that like we're not. So we get from verses 10 through 12 here, and it doesn't actually say like, so if my phone is like the knife for slaughter, it doesn't say that Abraham like has it up here. It's just, it's like if I'm picking up a knife in the kitchen to slice cucumbers, like I take the knife from over here and then I go over here to the cutting board. But if I just pick it up, the cucumbers are not yet in danger of being sliced, and so maybe it's just he picked it up and didn't even raise it, because then verse 12 says, do not raise your hand against the boy. But I think, Arnie, what I appreciated so much in what you said is that, like, why do we come back to this story so many times and just like, because what was he thinking in that moment of picking up the, or maybe like raising or even back to the beginning, what was he thinking? and we don't know. So we make up an answer, this is like, and this is Torah study. Okay.
I think from God's point of view, God, for Abraham to pass the test, Abraham actually has to be going through the motion where he's going to actually kill his son. It has to get to that point where he's lowering the knife in order for Abraham to pass the test in God's eyes.
So then here's another question that we can't ever really have the answer to, which is what's the test and how do you pass it? Okay, we're 4 minutes over, so definitely last word this time.
Okay, and I don't remember what rabbi, one or two ago, but I thought he said that the purpose of this story is to have the reader think about how far you do need to go to abide by God's laws. And so if you're reading the story from the standpoint of why was it included, it has not nothing, but it doesn't have that much to do with Abraham and his decision or his testing, but to observe what's going on and for the reader to make a decision about it himself.
With much respect to whichever rabbi said that, I think that if there was only one purpose to this story, it would be so much less rich of a discussion, right?
Oh, I'm not saying it was the purpose.
Yeah.
But it was a
purpose.
Yes.
This is great.
Isn't this?
Oh, okay. Oh, hold on. We might have to, we're going to move into overflow in a second, but to wrap up this session, because I hate going over time, it makes me feel like I'm not respecting your time. So thank you all for being here. Peace out. See you soon. Shavua Tov. Happy learning. See you next time. Bye.
So, yeah, go off, Rabbi.